Good morning, greetings, hello everyone, welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Hello everyone. Welcome back. If you're new to this channel, welcome. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Catalyst Weekly Astrology Report. We're going to go over the main astrological themes from today, June 10th, all the way up through the weekend, up to the following Friday, which will be June 17th. So just to get an idea of what the weekend's going to look like astrologically, what the week as a whole is going to look like astrologically, and just give ourselves some preparation, I guess you could say, right? Forecasting, just like the weather, just to give an idea of what the energetic weather may be like. There are a lot of really big transits. We have a full moon on Tuesday the 14th. It's also Flag Day here in the United States. There is a triple starseed activation with this full moon in Sagittarius. So I'll talk a little bit about that. On today's report, it's going to be much more in-depth information on our next Catalyst Classroom, session number 3. That will be coming out very soon in terms of promotional material and how to get involved. So, as the pendulum swings, right, the temporal distortion continues. Every time I've done a reading for myself or a personal reading, the cards associated with time keep coming out of the deck. Many people are reporting all kinds of interesting distortions, temporal distortions. And we talked about this on Monday, right? We talked about this actually last Friday as I talked about the Mercury and Saturn, their directions switching, right? Saturn is now in its retrograde period. Mercury has come out of its retrograde. It's still in its shadow. It's still in Taurus. It's still in conjunction with the Pleiades, but is now moving forward. And so there is, I think once Mercury moves past its last trine with Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, it'll be kind of full steam ahead in terms of our mental and cognitive functions and the way that we mentally move through the world. So we'll get all into that. But I just want to acknowledge that this temporal type of distortion or change or whatever it is that people are reporting across the board, something is happening, and it appears to be a much broader perspective of time and a time. And us in relation to time. And this is part of a transition to fourth density, right? And fourth dimension in terms of time as the construct in the fourth dimension. So I get a sense here, at least in my personal experience, that these very embodied distortions, these moments where it feels like we know only a certain amount of time has passed, but it feels like a lot longer, or vice versa. Maybe for some people it's not even relevant to what is going on. You lose time in a good way, right? It's not that you've forgotten, you have just been so engrossed in the moment that time kind of goes out the window. And I do get the sense that Venus and Uranus and their conjunction this weekend is going to bring us to this stasis point, or the 0 point, or that moment where the pendulum finds its balance. And in that moment, or that stasis, or that perfect balance or equilibrium in the material world, it does appear or feel to me that this will be a moment of kind of transcending. So we'll talk about that as we get into the astrology. So I just want to check in with the stream, see how people are doing. How are you feeling? Emily says, I'm here again, and I'm finally here for a live. I'm really happy you're here for a live too. Megan is here as well. Made it live. I'm glad you made it here live too. And I've been so tired this week. Thank you for bringing that up. Man, what a great segue, because I want to draw attention to that as well as we kind of transition into some more of the space weather, energetics, and we want to track what's happening with the sun. We want to track what's happening with the Schumann. We want to understand the mechanisms of electromagnetic radiation, photons, photonic light, wave functions, how the earth and the sun are interacting with each other, and how that we're not separate from that, because this is the means in which we recognize these changes in our own body. And that's the other thing about Venus and Uranus that I'm going to bring up later. But the thing about the being so tired, it is, again, one of those other things that's across the board. And I'm experiencing it too. My spouse is experiencing it. And, we are in the northern hemisphere getting very close to the solstice. So it's not getting dark until much, much later than when the body seems to be powering down. And we are finding ourselves, if it's dark, so that's been kind of strange and interesting, but people are reporting it, just not seeming to be able to sleep enough. And I do believe that is in preparation for something, or to create some sort of space to go deeper into more of the subconscious and more in the astral realms. I know that I'm sleeping deeply. I'm sleeping a lot. I'm very active in that state, but I'm not remembering much in terms of details, which means that it's likely those experiences are happening deeply in the fourth, stage of sleep. And I'm happy for that to be there. It seems like a lot of defragging and cleaning up in some ways. And we need rest in order for this to happen. We need to allow the space and the resources to be directed towards this process. And it does seem like that Saturn in its retrograde is allowing for the pendulum to swing a lot slower, right? And what is time? How is time related to, if you think of time as a fourth dimensional construct, right? And materium, right? Atoms, the material world as a third dimensional construct, right? The actual shape itself and the material qualities that make up third dimensional reality, which time and light seem to have a variable quality. Anyway, if you think about, that time seems to be slowing down in some ways, right? Not entirely, but there is this flipping of the hourglass, and gravity is, as far as I understand it, it's gravity that is the bridge in some ways between our experience of time and our experience of the material world. So that's just something that I'm opening up, I'm exploring, and there's something about the perception of time that is really important for us to be able to connect with right now. And I'm not exactly sure why, other than maybe creating a broader space, or when we see time from a larger perspective or a different perspective, then our whole concept of it changes as well, and our relationship with it changes, and then what we do with it changes, right? And I think there's something here that I think is really, it's come up a number of times. We talked about it in the Starseed Fellowship, and it's related to Saturn and Mercury so far. And once Mercury, like I said, moves past this trine to Pluto, as we're going to see this weekend, then I feel like it's full steam ahead going into Gemini, and really our consciousness individually and the movement of information, the signals, right? The downloads and uploads, the back and forth, that will be very active and in discovery mode and exploration mode and processing mode. But the context for that seems to get, it feels like it's really widening or deepening in some ways. And Saturn retrograde is like is somehow part of this process. So the first time, I'm going to tell a story, and then I'm going to bring something up here, actually. I want to just remind ourselves about some of the images that came up in the Starseed ministry on Monday. So I'm going to bring up a couple of things here, and then I'm going to tell a story. So if you remember this, right, we got the sands of time, but it was reversed, right? We have more time than we think. And that's not to say that there aren't events that are being activated. And we're going to see in the astrology, I mean, Jupiter, Mars, and Chiron all in Aries. I mean, it is kind of forcing the issue in some ways in terms of action, in terms of acting almost aggressively aggressively and certainly assertively, and to have a big space and a lot of resources put towards that as well. There is a lot of this happening, but we're coming into retrograde season. Even Chiron and Jupiter are going to be retrograde this summer. So we're coming into a point of, like I said, stasis. And imagine if you're watching the pendulum, back and forth, and then all of a sudden something changes drastically, and your relationship with that changes. So the benefit of this, I think, is honestly giving us more time in order to address within ourselves what is, still in need of attention, maybe to slow us down in the process and really distill everything down to its really base essence in polarization. And we're going to see that, again, Venus and Uranus together. It can be a really big aha moment, or a drastic but unexpected surprise financially or asset-wise, or it could be the complete opposite. The fact that you can't expect it is what makes Uranus so potent and powerful. So remember, this was on Monday too, this Sands of Time. And also as well, I just want to bring up the Cardinal as one of our guidance points, one of our spirit animal messages. And so again, the polarities, spiritual pursuits, physical, right? The spiritual material. Again, Venus and Uranus coming together is going to be it's going to distill everything down into our bodies, into our sensations, into what is really right in front of us and valuable and worthy and has value to us. It's going to boil down to these two things right in front of us. And again, aha moment, unexpected, balance or equilibrium, or something that throws us off, that kind of forces the issue. It's whatever it is for you, the potential is here this weekend. And so we've been moving into this place, and they're tired, they're processing. We are all processing so much, even still from the eclipse. And in fact, the moon is going to cross the eclipse point and make some incredible connections to Saturn and Neptune. So much of astrology that I want to cover. So the story I wanted to share about perception of time and how easily it can change and be distorted, and how our relationship changes, is the first time that I became aware, at least in this incarnation, of the actual malleability of time and reality. And so I was about 15 or 16, and you could probably guess what it was that led to that realization. It was definitely a plant medicine encounter of sorts. And I just remember laughing so hard at delighted almost at the realization of how malleable time and space really was. And I was just over the moon. I was, and it's been a friend ever since, right? It's really a plant medicine ally in terms of my shamanic relationship and practice. It's always been that way. And so again, it's about perception. And in that case, it was the relationship with cannabis, but there are lots of different ways. And I feel like that we are being primed collectively now with Saturn retrograde in Aquarius is priming the pump, or forcing the internalized foundation, right? Responsibilities, what we need to do in terms of, does the battery hold the charge, right? Is there enough water or moisture in the battery, the right proportions of the intensity there to hold the charge? And I think this is what we're going through right now. And there's something about Saturn retrograde that seems like a gift, honestly, of just, drawing time out. And when our perception of time changes, our relationship of time changes, lots of other things can change, and we realize that we have a lot more power in front of us than we had previously realized. So I want to start talking a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts of things like gravity and magnetic waves and light and the sun, because there's an interesting development happening. So I'm going to check in with the stream real quick. confused all week what day it is. Slow, fast, back and forth. Totally. There's been a couple times where I'm just like, I have no idea what day it is. Does it even matter, right? It seems to be more like an oscillation. I'm in a time warp as well, speeding up, slowing down, going reverse, jumping into the future, all the things. Yes, slept 9 hours the past 2 days and recalibrating. I'm not remembering details in sleep either, just feelings and vibrations. Yes. Completely. I'm in the same boat. Maybe we're all forming a new relationship with time right now. It's elusive and out of whack. Interdimensionality, quantum space, then linear space. Yeah, I mean, I think that we are in this quite literal transition from just strict material reality, going through the process of what it would feel like to start going through the quote unquote ascension process in physicality, right? So first is, you have to, in one way, we're all experiencing the astral, which is time, outside of time or through time, in our dreams, right? And I feel like that's a lot what's been happening. It's not so much visitation as much as there seems to be some timeline restructuring in terms of my experience. So I'm going to bring up the, bring up the Schumann for the last couple days, because this is very interesting to me. But yeah, there's a new relationship forming, and I get the sense that we're all kind of going through the actual material or physical transition now through this, and we need a lot of sleep. We need to take care of our bodies. And Venus in Taurus has been, I think, things can get real slothful when she's in her home sign, because she just wants to be comfortable. And part of that, I think, is sleeping. I think that it's just, it is really giving us the sensibility to take care of what is valuable. And our physical vessels right now are still the most valuable thing that we have to house our soul and consciousness. Otherwise, as the soul will not be able to go through its own evolution process without the body coming along in this process. This is where people are going to be exiting en masse because of certain choices that have been made. And not everybody will, right? I mean, and some have already. And I'm working with a hypothesis around this in terms of the solar weather. So I just want to validate, if you're feeling this too, a lot of us are here, and a lot of us are slowing way down, right? People walking away from relationships, people walking away from unnecessary responsibilities, people walking away from their businesses or what their service work has been in order to recalibrate themselves. So if you're feeling that, I get the sense that this is what this, leading up into the end of, coming into the equinox and Libra. So we're going to talk about Libra actually today when we get to the astrology. So this is the Schumann for the past couple of days in terms of amplification. So there was one on the 8th, but it's been pretty mellow for the most part. Now, what I noticed that is very interesting to me is, and especially if you've been watching this channel for a little while, you know that we're making these comparisons to what's happening at the amplification, the quality, and the actual frequency. So we know it's been pretty mellow. The sun's been mellow for a hot minute now. It hasn't really been, we haven't been getting a lot of plasma directed at us, not any real CMEs. Coronal hole is now coming into view again, so we'll get solar wind coming. But for the most part, it seems like it's crackling and popping, but it's not directing at us, right? We are, and when that happens, there's more cosmic rays that are coming to the planet. When the Schumann or the magnetosphere is not super dense, or we're not getting solar wind, there's more cosmic rays. So that's having an impact on us too. But this thing is interesting. So although it was pretty quiet, you can see that there was a pretty substantial rise in the quality of the Schumann around 1700 Universal Time. So that's 5 p.m. So on the East Coast, this is yesterday. 1 p.m. East Coast, noon Central Time, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Pacific. This is yesterday, okay? So you see this quality that is increased, okay? And you also see a pretty significant drop in the Schumann, which is what we normally see when there's amplification, but there isn't any. It's been kind of mellow in terms of that. But we saw that the quality and then the frequency itself, right? The pitch, the oscillation of the wave function per second went back down, right? And it's like roughly about 7.26, 7.25, right around the same time. So that's interesting. And then it came right back up. And if you notice, it's really been hovering for the most part around 8 hertz. This is a rise in the frequency of the Schumann, okay? A consistent one that's been happening for a while. But when this quality dropped, you could see that the Schumann dropped, but it didn't get loud. It just got, it got more, its tone got better. And if you're a musician or a singer, you know what I'm talking about. And this is how we've kind of wrapped our minds around the Schumann in one way, is thinking about all of the different aspects of sound vibration. And so the pitch dropped, but the quality increased, but it didn't get louder. But then it went right back up, like it bounced immediately back up. So this was yesterday. And I think that a lot of people, I mean, my eyes were closing at like 7, right? I couldn't even allow myself to go to sleep though, but we were both feeling it. So this is what I want to show you about this, is that at this same time, you're going to see a number of earthquakes that have happened. So in this one part of Tianpeng, China, and I know I'm not describing that correctly, but so again, this is yesterday. So this is about 7:30 p.m. Universal Time. So you're looking at, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. So this is the last of them. So if we go back here, I'm going to try to do it. I think I had it in chronological order, but so 5.6. Now these are not very deep, 20 kilometers, okay? And 5.6, 4.8. This is also 1621. 5.9, this is 1728. Remember we saw this is the time where the quality went up and the Schumann dropped, okay? And then there's a couple aftershocks later in the day at the same place. And these are very shallow. So I've heard a couple things about what shallow, sorry guys. I've heard a couple things about what it means to that shallow earthquakes represent. So you can probably look that up for yourself. But one thing I'm going to show you too is that this area of China, if you zoom out just a little bit here, and then I will bring it up for you now that I have it. There we go. It's kind of hard to see, but you're going to see that this is right on, the Tibetan plateau, right? This is very mountainous. So there's something going on there. And there's something going on there that impacted the Schumann resonance at that time. So I don't know what's going on there, and I'm not going to necessarily give any of my own personal thesis about it right this second, but because I don't know. But I know that these things are lining up. And I know that people really just like, I can't sleep enough. Something feels like it's going into almost like hibernation. Things are slowing down. But it seems like the astral realm is definitely a lot more active. So just honor it, right? Just honor what is happening in your body, and let it ride, because it's preparing us for something. And there is something going on that may be more on the exoteric, right? Like what's going on under Tibet there? What 10 kilometers for of these earthquakes is not very deep. So it's something that is very close to the surface, that is shifting around. And if in terms of an esoteric perspective, when it comes to Tibet, I mean, there are, it's one of the ways into inner earth, right? There's all kinds of UFO activity. Of course, the Tibetan monks and all of their connection to these mystery school traditions. And in fact, kind of the occult and the Vril Society being very, and the Theosophy, right? Being really interested in what was going on on there and the lineage that was preserved by these monks. So something is going on and shifting around. And as the coronal hole, as we're going to see, actually, this is a great segue as well, as the coronal hole comes into view during this week towards us, this is a pretty good earthquake predictor in terms of the solar wind having an impact on the geoelectric circuit and how that affects the crust of the planet. And, you know, you just have to study Tesla's work just a little bit to see why that would even be relevant, and why is that something that is not like instituted into earthquake prediction technology and science. Well, I guess, these are questions that I always like to ask. But here's this pretty prominent coronal hole, right? It's now facing in and is going to be facing us, and we'll get wind by, right after the full moon. So 14th, 15th, 16th, roughly. So by Monday, we're going to start feeling it again. So it's this moon in Libra and Scorpio over the weekend that is going to really pull us even deeper into the past, into what has been, into the depth of these power dynamics, and really looking and feeling ourselves in relation to what has been created so far. And then you have Venus and Uranus that are going to be in Taurus, right, representing the actual Earth itself coming together, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if there's even more shifting. Now we can see that the sunspots are coming into view, right? And they are already crackling. So there may be even solar flares at the same time too. So, and Mars and Chiron are going to come into a conjunction in Aries this week. So again, there's a lot going on. And it seems like there's a lot going on, and it seems like we have to just let it like buzz by us constantly while we are just kind of sitting in this meditative state. And this is certainly why I practice meditation. So when the shit hits the fan in your own life or in some sort of external way, you actually have the muscle memory and the neural pathway to go right into that space where you're fully connected to your higher self and to the energy of the planet herself, and everything else is swirling around you like the eye of the storm, right? That's one way to consider it. So just to look, we know that the sun is coming back into, sunspots are coming back into view, coronal holes are going to come back into view, and this week may see a lot more eruption in that way, plus the full moon in Sag, and all of the other stuff attached to that. So I'm going to bring up the chart for everyone, and let's get into the astrology, because that is truly what we are talking about today. All right, my friends. And I'm going to also share with you some promotional material. You may want to stick around for that too. Just some sales that I have coming up as well. So I'm going to bring... One of the things that we talked about, actually, on our last Starseed Fellowship, and of course, if you are curious about that and you're new here and you don't know what it is, there are resources in the description box below that'll help you with that. And one of the things we talked about were practical things, right? Practical ways to take care of ourselves during this time. And meditation, prayer, I cannot stress enough how important it is to, if you haven't already instituted a daily practice somehow, something that you will not let yourself falter with, even when you don't want to do it, right? And so for me, it's the first thing I do in the morning is get up and, take care of any other living beings that need my help, mostly the cats, take care of my own morning routine, but I go right into meditation, at least a half hour, and I have a whole prayer sequence and Reiki activation and stuff like that. So whatever it is, and allow myself to make that energetic connection, to practice it so that I can feel it and feel the different qualities in my body. And that's, as an energy worker for me, as an empath, it's definitely physical, like inner feeling. That's how I experience it. Everybody experiences things differently. And people talked about different strategies, coping strategies. The other thing that I'm doing is wild crafting like crazy. Like there's so much medicine that is in my yard that I'm just like, you know what? And it's all, it's all salve worthy and all ways to deal with skin eruptions, right? That seems like it might be really practical and relevant and completely free. Other than some other materials, right? To gather what is around you. And if there was ever a time with Venus and Taurus right now, to really get into what is inherently valuable to our thriving from the earth itself and what is already here. It's Venus and Taurus and things like, collecting plants, utilizing the minerals properly, being in harmony with nature. So it's just that Uranus is going to give it its own spin, right? So I was going to pop back into the chat before I get into the astrology because I'm going to just start channeling it. Megan says, your story reminds me of a similar and fond memory. A friend was upset because time wasn't passing. We had to cover the time on the microwave and taped a Joker card on it. And I still have the card. That is so awesome. Oh, I see. That's so awesome. Oh my God. It took me a minute to be like, oh yeah, one of those moments, right? And that's the other side of these plant allies, or, psilocybin, right? Which is not technically a plant. It's a fungus, which is even more similar to us than a plant is. It's in these moments that and there are other ways too. And this is actually such a another great segue that I had not considered till just now. Those practices that kind of deprive the body of the normal sensory input in order to allow for a different relationship to what's out there. There are so many different ways to do this. And the position that Chiron has been in and that Mars will be in conjunction with, I think is going to be, it's very much connected to this. So, okay, let's launch into the astrology. So this week is it feels like, of course, a full moon is culminating, right? So you can already feel each of us emotionally coming to a crescendo. And the full moon is going to be in Sagittarius. And in fact, it's going to be an activation for Arcturus, for Spica, and the axis itself is going to be related to Orion. So any of those starseed positions that you know or that you are aware of for yourself, just know that the moon, first of all, the moon in Libra is going to be crossing these points today on the 10th, but also the full moon in Sagittarius is in a sextile to Arcturus and Spica, and 24 to 25 degrees, or 23 to 24 Gemini. That is Orion. In Sag, it's opposite Orion. So there is a juncture here, and we're getting pretty close to the galactic center in general, but we're going to talk a lot about this type of stuff. The stars, the fixed stars, their qualities, the starseed lineage, the constellations that we're finding them in. There's a lot to this story that we're going to cover in the next Catalyst Classroom, the third session. That will be this coming week. Keep an eye out for promotional material either through Telegram or on my email list, or certainly through these videos. So the moon is going to be crossing this point in Libra over this weekend, and especially today. And so one of the things too that came out in our Starseed Fellowship conversation is just, we talked about Libra because there's this idea here, and I felt that this was a really great perspective that, and I personally have always kind of felt this intuitively, but it was put into words so well by Barb, just that the evolutionary astrology perspective about Libra is that on the outside it seems very balanced, but on the inside the amount of energy and work that needs to go into establishing that equilibrium is very present. And remember that Libra is cardinal air. There is a momentum of behind it, just like Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And these are all the angular houses, right? 1, 4, 7, and 10. These are all cardinal signs. They have some type of momentum, right? They go. And so with Libra, it's the application of knowledge in order to create equilibrium. And so when we get to the fixed star that is related to that is Arcturus, right, which is in the Boots constellation, which is actually in the groin of the Boots constellation, which is a shepherd or a herder. And that's the symbol, or the person, right, that it symbolizes. It's this idea, especially here, of being able to, when the equilibrium is established in an adept way, right? When the yin and the yang are interplaying at a certain frequency or fast enough, right? In a fast enough rotation, they will change into each other, right? That is the real wisdom that the Arcturians especially, and even Spica to a certain extent. Spica is about the individual perfection that is symbolized in the Virgo constellation, the head of the grain that is offered, right? It is the fruit that bears the seed. So both of these things represent what it's all for, and truly the real mastery of being able to find that equilibrium. This is important because when the moon is in this relationship with Arcturus today, right? I mean, this is this morning. If you really look at it, it's already passed, is a trine to Saturn. Because Libra is going to, all through the moon's time in Libra, it has been challenged this whole time. So it's either been in opposition to all of this Aries energy. Yesterday, it's been a quincunx, right? That 150-degree angle with all of the Taurus energy as well. And now is in a quincunx on the other side with what is in Pisces and but is in a trine to Saturn. There is some type of emotional stability, confidence, authority that is derived from the trine with Saturn in Aquarius, and vice versa, with this ability to be an adept with the polarization. It does require an application. You can't just sit in the polarity, which is a tendency here with the sun in Gemini, right? We're really identifying with the polarity, but it's mutable, right? It's got no direction. It is just wherever it is. And ideas are flying, right? And many people are getting to the point where they are truly identifying with the dialectic in and of itself in a not very good way. Or just especially with all this Mars and Aries shit, right? Meeting Chiron, it's going to reach a head in terms of the spiritual war, right? The good and evil. And remember that War of the Roses, right? The facing off. It's really easy right now to be identified, sustained, to find our expression in this. It's here. That is really going to stabilize us, I think, emotionally, and show us where how to find that equilibrium, which is it's about rhythm. It's about rhythm. It's not about this or that, right? It's not about the switch on or off. It's the oscillation, right? It all comes back to frequency and vibration. And it's like a broken record, but it's true. And it's in the actual application of knowledge of who we are, and to give ourselves, surrender ourselves, knowing that the seed is part of this process and finding that equilibrium. So Saturn, it's a very stable emotional moment here with this in order to establish if the social organism that we are finding authority and confidence and a sense of responsibility for is a social voice, as it were, or the orchestra or the symphony, right? Words almost from our perspective. And so we have to, it's very disorienting, but again, it's about oscillation within ourselves. If we can take our spiritual will and love and have that work for the same function, this is going to be very useful and helpful, and is going to be reinforced with the full moon in Sagittarius, because it'll be in a sextile to here, as we're going to see as we move through this time period. So today is the 10th, like I said, and so the moon is going to move through Libra. It's challenged the whole way. There's a square to Pluto retrograde, and then it moves into Scorpio. And what I think is really interesting about this transition or transit into Scorpio is I'm going to bring this out here. One of the things that I find really interesting is that we're going to see that the moon in Scorpio is going to enter Scorpio like pretty much down to the minute of when the Mercury trine to Pluto retrograde is. Now, Pluto rules Scorpio. Mercury actually, as a deity, was the only deity that could move into the underworld. And so this perspective, this mature perspective that has been going on with Mercury in a trine to Pluto, now retrograde, has been going on now for a number of weeks. And this is kind of the last pass right now. And remember, this is in the Pleiades territory. So when we look at this, we see here's the trine here, Pluto and Mercury now direct, right? It's had 2 passes over this point already. 3 really, if you count 1 and then retrograde, back to it, and then now moving direct. And so this is the 3rd pass, I guess. So then the moon comes right into Scorpio. This weekend, I really get the sense here, like I said, it's just, we're going to feel into the past, into what has been, right? We're going to cross the South Node. We're going to cross the point of the eclipse again, and have a relationship with Saturn and Neptune, as we're going to see, and not in the same favorable way that the moon in Libra is having with Saturn, but now it's going to square it. And Neptune in Pisces. It is going to go retrograde at the end of this month, my friends. The fog is going to clear around some things, and we're going to realize here that there's no such thing as unity unity consciousness forever while we're in physicality. Part of the relationship of coming into material form as a soul and as a divine soul coming into this material experience is that eventually we come back into our own unique forms and seed points. And this is where Neptune is like, it's like all these tributaries that are branching off from the one now, and there's no force or there's no, attempting to merge anywhere. It's just all of these different tributaries and all of these different waterways that are going off, and we just kind of float down them, right? And there's no real separation from source. It's the separation by coming back into this unique subjective moment of I am, which is Aries, right? Which is where Mars and Jupiter and even Chiron is. And so I think people have been very confused, right? Which way am I going? Am I even, we've just gotten past this real cathartic purification, which we'll go through again because Neptune's going to station retrograde and we'll have our Neptune retrograde. So we're really going to go back over, okay, I see this purification and this cathartic purification at a soul level. And I'm starting to see that it's putting me in a certain direction, but it's not very obvious yet. I think it'll be a lot more obvious when Neptune reaches this point next year, coming out of its shadow and moving forward for good. And you're like, okay, now I see the pathway truly that I'm on. And so we may, with Saturn here, of course, we may want to again, trying to establish where we do belong and what is our structure. And when we get to this point, I'll make these comparisons with the moon. The moon at Scorpio, the full moon in Scorpio, the eclipse, right? That's going to be where the moon is in a trine, right? A trine. And I do suspect, again, keep in mind that this eclipse season is not, takes us out to October and November. And so what was incredibly potent at the eclipse that was passing through us all so emotionally, like a torrential, tidal wave of emotion and intensity, is not necessarily, we have not seen how we're going to adjust to things, but there is a sense of trust in our feeling and in our spiritual connection of where we're going. It just hasn't been fully established quite yet, and it's very difficult to trust where we're going when we know that it's new territory and we're really just aligning with what is rather than attempting again to create something more than what is. We've already done this. And I'm not saying we won't do it again, but at a soul level, we've learned our lesson here. And I think that's going to be the descent into the past and these deep feels with the Scorpio moon over the weekend. And this is what, we're on that tour bus to hell as we get this perspective of what all of this destruction so far has been for. So take care, right, of yourselves, and realize that the intensity of feeling with the moon in Scorpio is going to be the highlight of, I think, a lot of the weekend. And so it goes, like I said, here's 0 degrees. It's going to come into an opposition almost directly with Venus and Uranus conjunction. If we go ahead a couple hours here on Saturday, let's see here. More like late afternoon into the evening on Saturday, we're going to have the moon meeting or be directly opposite Uranus here. There we go. You guys can see this. So these two come together and distill everything down to its essential, mind and spirit, coming down to our come to Jesus moment, coming down to our Buddha under the Bodhi tree moment, coming to our Arjuna and our Bhagavad Gita moment here, very much in the real physical material world. What gives us value, comfort, security in our senses, right? And the thing about Venus in Taurus especially is her sensitivity, right? In the feels and her senses. And when things aren't right, she knows, and it may not be something mentally cognizant at that moment, but Venus knows exactly when things shift. And this will be shocking and surprising. Perhaps this is going to be a big change in terms of the banking system, the financial system, right? Where the moon is opposite all that, about what about everything I've created within, right? And how I've allowed God to work through me, or what I have been able to generate and produce at a collective or communal level. I mean, with Uranus involved like this, it could very well be a big crash over the weekend. So, but it also depends on where esoterically you are going to find these things in your own chart to see how it's really going to be expressed. But then the moon will pass over the South Node shortly after this on Saturday, and we'll again remember the how we've transubstantiated these base drives in the past. And some people are going to attempt to utilize that as if that is the direction we are still headed, right? Attempting to transubstantiate, right? This degree where the South Node is, I mean, it is the Babylonian money magic. It is sexual magic. When you look at the Sabian symbol of 23 degrees of Scorpio, right? It's taking these base drives and transubstantiating that into a higher, more, form of potency, energetic potency, emotional or inner feeling-based potency. So there's a memory here. Again, there's going to be these memories that are coming up that can really propel us forward into acknowledging, what it is that is valuable, and, the process of the natural world to give us the raw materials in the first place. But I feel like that there is, oh boy, there's going to be many attempts to try to, pretend that we're still going in this direction, and it's just there's not much going on here other than you're just hanging on for dear life to the tail of the dragon that's just whipping you around. So this is coming into Sunday morning, as you can see here on the 12th, and the big the moon moving through the last decan of Scorpio is very interesting. So like I said, it's going to reach the point of the full moon lunar eclipse, right? 25 to 26 degrees of Scorpio. And as we're going to see here, it's like I said, it's in a trine to Neptune in a structure now within ourselves in terms of this, the symphony. Can we each hold the resonance of this whole social voice right now? And this is going to be difficult, right? I just want to make a peaceful adaptation, right? I just want to go with the flow. And a moon in Scorpio, right? We're going to be feeling it very, very intensely. Now, the trine to Neptune, this is a really great opportunity here, which is that there is no one way to do things. And we may not know exactly, where this influence is going to take us. We just know that it's now everybody's kind of branching off. Like I said, these tributaries coming off from a bigger, from a main body of water, and we don't know where it's going to take us. And in fact, we're going to have to kind of like backtrack a little bit or go in circles, but at least then we won't be lost, I think, as much as we have been with Neptune going retrograde. So this moment, we may not... It's going to be more spiritual, in the feels, in the woo, in terms of our emotional adaptation in this moment. Again, accepting that we just don't have all of the answers right now, but what we do have is the capacity to really shore up our own sense of authority and inner structure as the outer structures are crumbling away with Pluto here. That's what Pluto's doing. And we still have a ways to go, right? We haven't even gotten to the actual Pluto return to the U.S. yet. That's going to be the retrograde Pluto mid-July. So as we go through the week, there are some, just to be aware of what's happening. So the full moon in Sagittarius. So Sagittarius people, just know that your forecast is coming, right? You are on deck in terms of the full moon forecast for today. So that'll be coming soon enough. So one thing that we see here on the 13th of June, which is Monday, right? The day before the full moon, we're really getting this culmination. The moon has already moved into Sagittarius at this point on Monday. Is Mercury moves into Gemini, right? Conjunct Alcyon, one of the 15 Bohemian fixed stars, something that I'm going to talk more about in the Catalyst Classroom this week. And also, this is the main star of the Pleiades star cluster is Alcyon, so 0 degrees Gemini, back home. So there's also going to be like, bing, you remember the Cazimi that we had on the, as the sun came into Gemini? Well, bringing that now back into full effect, right? Taking that discovery and that really strong lens at that time, inner lens, is now like, okay, now I can look out at the fullness of the field here and actually see it with my own awareness and move forward. So take this into account, because it's going to be how everything around the issue of the opposition, right? All of this Gemini energy has all of this resistance in some ways. Has it provided us the opportunity to reach a sense of real satisfaction, right? Do we feel like we're really able to integrate into society? Do we feel like we have not given up ourselves, but we are part of something? That is the culmination here of this full moon on the 14th. And there are, like I said, so many Starseed activations going along with this full moon that we'll talk about in the Catalyst Classroom that will be relevant for the remainder of the lunar cycle, right? We are talking about a culmination, but it's still going to be relevant as we go through this lunar cycle. But here is our full moon. And like I said, knowing where Gemini is in your chart has all of the opposition, has the resistance of a dialectic or polarized identity. Has it allowed you to transcend the chaos and the entropy of the experience, right? Or, are you just kind of showing off, right? And it's really just surface level. And you're really not actually getting anywhere substantial with any meaning at all. And in fact, it's all just kind of hologram in front of you. It's not real, right? Just like, the pond that you were skating on wasn't real either. Are you being identified with the dialectic that is being presented to you as something, or are you actually transcending the resistance that is presented to you, and feeling a sense of belonging and meaning, and like you are actually getting something from this, and a sense of satisfaction and understanding? Now, the moon in Sagittarius is strength. It's our strength, and it is often ruled by the moon. Actually, the moon in Sagittarius is the Nine of Wands. It's actually the second decan, right? The second 10 degrees is the strongest in terms of that connection. But still, we are getting into some not only understanding of the abstraction or the pattern of meaning, but now able to transfer it in some ways, or to communicate it, or to establish the pattern in some ways, and to get something from it, get real meaning, get reinforcement from it. So this full moon is going to, is it working, right? Are we feeling fulfilled? And if we're not, we're going to feel that too. It may, like I said, it may just be a hologram. There's no real, there's no cottage, there's no, there's no white picket fence, there's no bluebird. It's just, you try to touch it and it just goes right through it, right? Your hand goes right through it. So that's at least how I've been considering it. So this is Tuesday, our full moon. And from here, like I said, the moon is, or not the moon, Mars is going to be conjunct Chiron. This is happening on the Wednesday the 16th. The moon will be in Capricorn. Mars is conjunct Chiron. So one of the things I wanted to talk about with this particular degree, number one, Andromeda constellation, 16 degrees of Aries, okay? That's something to put a pin in if you know you have Andromeda. These two conjunct. This degree is about reattuning yourself to the natural spark of life. And when you are able to, it's that sensory deprivation, right? Or the change in reality or perspective, right? Plant medicine, we've talked about already. Other ways that you can do this without that is fasting, right? Any kind of sensory deprivation. So you go into the float tank, for instance. This is a way to deprive the body of a certain type of energy that allows you to see those more subtle natural forces in a way that your consciousness can actually understand, right? So then you get visions, you have these types of visual experiences when you are utilizing plant medicine, for instance. You have a different relationship with time, you have a different conception of it. But these things come when you deprive the body of its normal stimuli, right? And you get to a point where you're able to kind of have a non-rational, holistic. And there's something extremely profound here with Mars and Chiron that I think is going to either something here that will either allow us to come to a really significant healing, right? Imagine taking a vision quest, right? So if you think about the Lakota vision quest, gosh, and now the name of it is really escaping me, and that really bothers me because I spent a lot of time researching it and understanding it. But the idea here is that you go off, for a number of days on your own, and you're depriving yourself of food and water, right? You don't have anything. You have the special tobacco pipe that is made from a specific type of mineral, and you are waiting for a message. You need some real courage and a sense of fearlessness in some ways, and something that acts within you in order to keep going and do this. And you will bump up against these Chiron wounds of who you've been, who you think you always have been, who you can never not be, right? Or fall into a victim-savior type of dichotomy within yourself. This is either there's going to be a substantial need to courage to really face these issues and really deprive ourselves of something in order to establish this, or it's going to be done for us. I do get the sense too that this may be provided through some sort of very aggressive and even a couple days before, some sort of aggressive or eruptive type of event that could then really trigger this moment here. And, all kinds of things will allow that to happen. And so the best case scenario is to do this for ourselves. But there are a lot of other ways that allow for this attunement that are not, they're dangerous or they're traumatizing. Trauma is one of the primary ways to calibrate a person and their, to a certain type of identity. Okay. And that's the other thing that's going to come up with this. And so we have to be very aware of the potentials coming forward here with these types of transits, especially just coming off of this full moon. Again, I think that there is something here to establish for ourselves. If that polarization, if it's been something that has allowed us to ascend or transcend some difficulty and lead us home into an integration of ourselves into a pattern of meaning, or if it's or we'll see what has to go, what isn't working. And right after that is something that could completely draw our attention away into, again, seemingly another one of those moments of stillness of like, oh, everything is down to this, distilled moment of experience and what it brings out. But this is going to be more ego-based survival and output, whereas Venus and Uranus is going to be very much in the way our sensitivity to the material world and how we feel. So Mars and Venus are both at home, and they're both making connections to these two figures that have interesting and sometimes really unsettling impacts on us in the chart. So It's building. I do feel like it's building here. And I'm excited for the Catalyst Classroom to talk about all of the fixed star and starseed relationship to this full moon and the larger mythology and mythological context of all of it. So the 16th, like I said, the 15th is this Mars conjunct Chiron. The 16th is when the sun has this relationship with Neptune and Saturn. And this is also when Venus meets the North Node, okay? Rahu, the head of the dragon. And this is I think this is going to be a moment where we realize that our evolution is really in the direction of the natural value of the world around us needing time, right? Again, there's time, just like a mineral develops its value to us as based on its relationship to the forces of the planet and of chemistry, right? And the forces of physics in a lot of ways too, but the planetary impact on these minerals is where the value comes from, and we just give it a name, right? Or certify it. It's not something we create together. Venus meeting this point is going to bring this issue home, I think, right up to our front door in terms of our feelings and our senses and our value and our resources and our assets and our relationships and all of the things that we are sensitive to in terms of our thriving in this world. So Venus meeting the North Node and then the Sun, right? The Sun has a trine to Saturn. The Sun is in a square to Neptune. These two have been in what we call a semi-sextile. It's a basic, it's called a minor aspect. It's a 30 degree. So it's balanced, but it's only half the story of the full sextile, which is where inner transmutation happens, right? Harmony from the challenge. So it's half of the conversation here. So they're traveling together, and soon it'll still be together because Neptune will be stationing and going retrograde. So the sun is, okay, number one, the sun is in these Orion territory now, and has been, and will continue to be so for a little while longer. This is a very strong Orion activation with this trine to Saturn in Aquarius, and it's really about stripping everything down and identifying, not with all of the stuff related, but really getting down to the essential nature of the this or that, the yin and the yang, right? And it's everything stripped down. Just like the trees in wintertime are stripped bare and there's snow covering the ground, and we have a winter sky, right? Everything down to its base yin and yang element, okay? And nothing else to establish any identity there. And when I feel like that this is going to allow, stabilize a sense of identity for us in terms of what the metronome is doing for our collective voice or our symphony, right? Slowing down, which in a lot of ways is allowing us to slow down. And although we're identifying with a seemingly much more rapid type of energy, right? The sun still has a higher gravity than Saturn. Otherwise, Saturn would be a sun probably, right? That's a different conversation. There's something here about slowing down that allows us to really actually, and this is where the sleep, this is where I think the dreams, and it seems so counterintuitive, right? Because it's a sun in Gemini. You think it's just awake and it's thinking and identifying. But what I feel here is that we've just kind of come back around to this really strong Gemini period where the North Node was, and just kind of revisiting again. Okay, this is what this feels like. This is how I identify with this. And it's different now. And the slowing down, I think, is really allowing us to actually establish for ourselves what the base essentials of the polarization within our own identity, within the way that we exteriorize, what we discover, communicate, all of these things, how we express ourselves, really. That's what the sun represents. The thing is that the square to Neptune is like, I'm not saying you got to strip it all down. Neptune's just like, just go with the flow, baby, right? Just follow the flow of this, your own individual lazy river, right? Oh, we're going to just drop off here and go down this way. You don't have to do anything, right? It's just like you just flow with it. And the sun is just like, oh, no, right? No, there's no flow here. It's mutable air, but it's just like, no, this is all in the mind, in the consciousness, and the expression. So you can see how already we may feel by midweek leading up to next weekend. Really, this is Thursday, right? So this is where we're really going to end this report here. By the time we get to Thursday, we will have, it will be, there will be, what our ego wants and what is happening at the most cosmic and transcendental level with Neptune and Pisces right now. They're going to be in conflict with each other, and it's going to still be I think it's still going to be very confusing. The anchor here with Saturn retrograde is the time and the metronome slowing down and be like, okay, well, at the very least, I can at least establish for myself and my own expression and my own spiritual sustainment, what is the essence of this dialectic for myself? How do I express it? How do I identify with it? So it's going to be, oh boy. Things are going to start really acting up. And I do anticipate, Mars in Aries getting so close to Chiron like this. I do anticipate a lot more of the active, the active aggressing, if that makes sense. And we've seen a lot of it already, right? I mean, everybody's got their own source of information, but I'm pretty sure that it's reached about everybody that there are a lot of aggressive and singular lone gunmen out there in some ways. And meeting Chiron again is the old identity or the supplanted identity. Boy, talk about mind control. Is that what is initiating and really compelling this action, or is it a real awareness of our potential to heal and how we can establish a relationship with those natural forces that then allow ourselves to be in balance, right? It balances our chakras, our balances our endocrine system. And you know what I do? I mean, and we've talked about this before, and in meditation, one of the first things that I do is I establish the Earth Star chakra, like my connection to it, right? I establish that, I open the crown, and then it's just it all is connected. And at that point, there's nothing but that energy moving through and around my body. And that is more real in that moment than just about anything else. And so being able to establish that groundedness and a sense of real authenticity and who you are and your actual connection to divinity, it's really important. So if you don't have that, then anything can come in, especially triggers, right? Oh, gosh, it's just, we can be the master teacher that Chiron is and act from there, or we can be the victims or feel like the savior and act from there. And both are going to be completely relevant, and it's all up to us at this moment. So if we strip everything down to the bare essentials and take away all of the extra stuff on top of it and just identify with, okay, this is the bare archetype of this and that in terms of my voice, I think that that's going to establish way more stability and this capacity to actually slow down and follow the metronome within ourselves, right? While things may be acting up and being possibly even aggressive around us. So yeah, I'm not exactly excited. I mean, in some ways I am, with Chiron and Mars together and Venus and Uranus together like this over the next, week happening, but it seems very necessary. So things will become clearer by the end of the month, I think. When Neptune stations retrograde, the fog will begin to clear at that point. And we're going to see things a lot clearer than we have in terms of the bigger picture and the spiritual nature of things when Neptune stations direct. So I'm going to check in with the chat real quick here. I'm going to see here, I'm going to share a couple promotional things with you guys, and then we will move on with our Friday. How does that sound, my friends? So the first thing I want to share, and if you're not on my email list, you might want to do that. You can link to that in the description box below. So that when I am dropping some new promotion or sale. So the first thing I want to share with you is that I'm offering a sale. This is for my Starseed readings. So this is a 25% discount at $66 USD. It's a 66-minute recording. Great way to find out what your starseed markings are, where they're at, get an idea of how to read for these in the chart in the current transits. So that's something that is being offered right now. And we are so close to our solstice, right? Our June solstice. And so I'm also offering individual astrological forecasts for June to December, right? This season, the solstice to solstice. So 60-minute or 90-minute recording, $66 or $99 USD. Both of these are bookable from the website, catalystenergies.net. That is linked in the description box below. Of course, you can just check out everything else that you need on the website or in the description box below. So, my friends, keep an eye out for the next Catalyst Classroom. Our third session is going to be in the upcoming week. I will have promotional material coming for that in the near future. In the meantime, my friends, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. I look forward to seeing you on Monday for the Starseed Ministry. I look forward to your comments, to your likes, your subscriptions, sharing this content, and certainly reaching out if you have any questions or feedback through email, which is in the description box below as well. I love you guys. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you on Monday.